Hi everyone! So today I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the best things, in my opinion, about living in Singapore. So I was there on exchange for one semester. I just wanted to share with you, from my experience, what some of the best aspects or experiences I had in Singapore. There's actually two dogs here. This one is Willow and this one is Buffy. So if you hear a little grunting, it's probably her. She tends to be a little bit of a grumpy munchkin, so she might be barking and grunting a little bit. Don't mind her too much. Yeah, you're cute. You're cute, aren't you? They're Lhasa Apsos if you're curious about the breed. But yeah, they're my little guests for this video because I'm dog sitting them for the weekend, so that's why they're here. But yeah, moving on. So the first thing I would like to mention is that Singapore is very multicultural, and I absolutely loved that about Singapore. So I grew up, I went to international schools. I did the IB program, which was very international in Finland. I went abroad for university, and my university here in Scotland is very international as well. So I've kind of grown up in that sort of environment, and just Singapore by itself is very multicultural. Like, it's very open to like lots of different ethnicities, and I think isn't there 4 different main languages. So they have Mandarin, English, Tamil, and Malay. And then they also have like a large Malay population, the Chinese population, and the Indian population, as well as, people from all over the world as well. And what they do say is Singapore is kind of like an East meets West place. So there's like a really fusion of different, influences, English UK influences, Dutch influences, because it was a colony as well. So it does have all these like Asian influences as well as like European and Western influences. You hear lots of different languages being spoken on the streets. There's a lot of different food and cuisine. People have like all their different traditional outfits. There's a lot of different holidays. So I learned so much about, what kind of holidays are out there. So for example, during my semester, we had the Indian festival called Deepavali, which I had never heard of before, and it was really interesting to, see the country celebrate that, because they do have, so many different ethnicities. They do celebrate a very wide array of different holidays. So that was really cool to experience, and going to Little India during that time was really awesome. Another thing that I really did enjoy was that English was very widely spoken. Just for the ease of getting around and stuff, it does help my case a lot when moving to a new country, that you're able to communicate with the locals and the people that live there. Another point was that Singapore feels very safe and secure. They do take pride in being one of the safest countries in the world. Now, they do have a lot of restrictions and rules, and that's another thing they're famous for. But as a whole, I do think that Singapore does feel very safe. It is one of the safest countries in the world, but it also feels safe. For me as well, being female, it's always sort of a issue kind of in the back of your mind when you're running around doing your own thing, by yourself. You're going from place A to place B and you're alone. It's always kind of in the back of your mind, to be extra alert and, just take extra precautions so nothing goes wrong. And of course, like, those same precautions shouldn't be thrown out the window just because you're in Singapore, but I do feel like my senses were not as heightened as they normally are. Like, I just didn't get like that gut feeling of, oh, I should be a little bit wary, even in the evenings. Like, the sun sets about 7 p.m. every day, so it would be like completely dark by 7. So even if I came back at like 10, 11, 12, I always felt completely safe, taking the public transportation by myself, walking around alone. I didn't have that unease that I feel like even in Finland and here in the UK, I do get very uneasy when walking alone after dark, especially. In Singapore, I never felt that. And another thing that never happened was I never got catcalled. I did get approached for like a casual conversation by people and guys in Singapore, but I was never like shouted at. I was never catcalled. No one yelled any derogatory statements, which is something that has happened in the US and the UK to me. So I think that's another aspect that, makes you feel safer when, people mind their own business and they don't really like butt in so much, like in that kind of like uneasy, slimy way. But yeah, that was something I really valued, that I was able to, you know, explore the island by myself and not feel unsafe. I was able to, you know, use public transportation in the evening and not feel unsafe. I was able to walk around, you know, after dark and during the daytime and never feel unsafe. Obviously, there are areas that, you know, best be avoided if you're alone in the dark, but like for the most part, and you just, you know, if you use your common sense and you stick to, you know, more populated, well-lit areas, you know, there was never a time where I felt, oh my god, I feel like really unsafe here, let's get out ASAP. Like I didn't have that, where as especially like now I live in the UK, I do feel that when it's dark, like I don't really want to be walking alone too much. So yeah, I did feel it was a lot easier to do things solo, and I did spend a lot more time than I usually do like exploring and doing things alone because of that. Another thing I did notice, and now I don't know if this is like a universal experience, but I found people to be a little more expressive, certain subgroups of Singaporeans. Now, this is just my individual experience. Now, I'm not trying to like blanket statement or anything, but when I was in Universals, there's this ride called Transformers, and I felt like, especially the Malays and the Indians, they were so much more expressive and like yelling, laughing, screaming on the rides than Finnish people. Because Finnish people have a reputation. If you go to Finland to those amusement parks and you go on the rides, of course there's some screaming and laughter and stuff, but it's nowhere near the same level as the people in Singapore. Because people in Finland, they can sit on a ride and literally not show a single expression on their face. Whereas I feel like it's a much more fun experience when people, you know, have some emotion, you know, they scream, they laugh on the ride. You know, it made me scream and laugh on the ride as well. It's just like that kind of excitement and enjoyment and fun times. It's contagious. So, you know, it makes me happier, and it made the whole ride experience much more fun, in my opinion, because people kind of showed their emotions more, like at least expressively, like outside. Does that make sense? Like outwardly showed their expressions more. And I might have just gotten lucky, and that's why like certain rides, I would ride them like 5-6 times in a row, just because like the experience of having all that excitement around you, it just bubbled over to me, and I just like, it made that experience that much more fun. They were like, I love you, Megatron, and then when the ride asks you like, is everyone okay? And then they'd shout like, yes! And that's the kind of thing I don't think you would really experience that in Finland. People wouldn't like have that back and forth with the ride. Whereas in Singapore, people did do that. Now, not everybody, but there is a subsection of people that would. And I thought that was like really, really fun and amazing and lovely to see. And another thing, the animals there are something, like, we have such different, you know, flora and fauna in Singapore and Finland. So it's just really cool to see like all those tropical plants. It was cool. Like in Universals, I was on a ride and I saw a parrot fly by. Like that blew my mind. And there's wild monkeys. I saw wild pigs, and I saw wild bats. I just like, it blows my mind. Like the animals there are so exotic to me, and it was just, I love animals and I love nature. So just hiking around, or like even in the city, like seeing lizards, you know, seeing like weird insects or weird birds. For me, it was such an amazing and new experience, and I just like, every time I would see this new animal, like I would be blown away, and I was like, wow, I'm really in the tropics. Oh, and something about the campus itself, there's like a policy of no smoking on campus, which I found fantastic, because I'm the type that feels sick when I smell smoke, and like I'm not a fan of the smell at all. Like it makes me feel a bit nauseous when I smell secondhand smoke, or like anything to do with smoking. It just like, I don't know, it just makes me feel sick. So they had a policy of no smoking on campus, like anywhere. There's no smoking areas or anything. You just had to leave the campus area completely, which I thought was fantastic. Bus stops too. You couldn't smoke on the bus stop, so people like had to go way to the side, which was great, because here in the UK, where I go to school, people are like walking down the street smoking, you know, they like conjugate like right in front of the doors of the classroom, not the classrooms, but like the school buildings, like right outside the doors, there's like big groups of people smoking. So when you're walking in and out of buildings, you know, you're hit with like this big smoke wave. Or when you're walking down the street, there's like 50 people that are smoking walking beside you, and it's really, honestly, it's really hard to escape, and it's really hard to go even a day by without smelling cigarette smoke. So yeah, I breathe it in every day here. And in Singapore, because it was banned and people had to completely like leave to do it, I think I smelled cigarette smoke maybe one time the entire semester I was there. And it was something I thought about every now and then, and it just felt so freeing because it's not a habit I do, so I don't particularly like being forced to partake in other people's habits. So it was just something that I just really appreciated, like just that small thing that you don't always think about so much, like especially here, it's just such a daily occurrence. It happens all the time, you know, going in and out of buildings, walking down the street, it's very hard to escape. But there, when it just wasn't present, you notice it, how it just affects so much of your life, even if it's not a habit you have, that it was just, oh, so liberating. And I was like, the air feels so clean and fresh. It was amazing. So yeah, that was something I really enjoyed. And the university as well. The gym is free. You can get free access to all the pools and the gyms without any additional extra charges. Whereas here, you do have to pay for gym membership. And, you know, being a student, it's not always fun having to, you know, shell out money for these extra expenses. Another thing is the food in Singapore is so cheap. You can get a really good meal for $3. The school canteens, okay? I would eat at the Indian stall a lot. I could get a full meal of rice and like 2 veggies for $2.50. Even like when you go eat out, eating out was so cheap, especially with the exchange rate, because the euro is more powerful than the dollar, the Sing dollar. So it was just, oh my god, ugh. Just going eating out, like there are Thai places, I could get like a meal for $4, and just all these hawker centers and the canteens, like it was so easy to get so much food for less than $5. Those fresh fruit juices for like about $2, $2.50. Oh, they were heavenly. Like I probably had an avocado smoothie like almost every day. Strawberry smoothies, they were so good. Like they would crush up, or like they would make smoothies out of fresh fruits, and those were so heavenly, and they're so cheap. Here they're so expensive. In Finland too, they're so expensive to get like fresh ones, and they're not nearly as good. And in Singapore, just food in general is so good, and it's so cheap, and there's just so much like variety. It was like, oh, that is something I do miss. In the beginning I did struggle being vegetarian to like find the different places where they have like stuff that I really liked and I could have, but once you find those things, oh, I do miss it. Another thing about Singapore is that it is called the Garden City. There's so much green and there's so much nature. They have a lot of nature reserves, they have a lot of parks, even ingrained within the city itself. You go to downtown, there are still grassy areas, there are still trees, there are still like flowers and bushes everywhere. It's just really beautiful, and it's so infused within the city, and I think that really keeps, you know, your spirits up. I remember in Venice, they had zero green. They had like no plants in the city, and that does feel weird. And I do think people crave that, you know, vegetation. You know, it keeps your mental health good. So I just think infusing that within the city was beautiful, and I absolutely loved it, having all that lush greenery everywhere. And they were really good at upkeeping too. They kept everything very, very clean. And they kept, yeah, that's another point, like just the cleanliness of everything. You know, all the paths were meticulous. There's no trash anywhere. All the, you know, public spaces are so well kept. You know, all the trees are manicured, all the grasses are manicured, the bushes are manicured, like there's just flowers, like gardens planted everywhere, and just everything looks so neat and tidy and like very perfect, to be honest. And like to some people that might be a little off-putting, but I do like cleanliness in general, so that's very nice. And then even going back to Finland, Finland is known as a very clean place, but then Finland did feel a little bit dirty afterwards, just because the standard in Singapore is very high. Like, I don't think I've ever been anywhere that's like kept the city so clean. And you know, that's why they have rules like no chewing gum or no littering or no durians on the MRTs and stuff like that, just because, you know, they have a standard and they, you know, really try to control everything to make sure that everything stays very neat and tidy and orderly. Another thing I really did like is, you know, escalators, and here, there's not really a rule, so people kind of stand wherever they want to stand, you know, blocking the whole way. In Singapore, okay, it is a little bit interesting, but everybody stands on the left of the escalators. So there's just like one single line of people on the left, and then the right is like the passing, so nobody stands on the right side. So people who want to walk up the right, and people who want to stand on the left. So it's very organized and orderly in that fashion. So I thought that system worked really well. So, and everybody, like, and I would say like 95% of people followed it. So it does work, and it lets people pass others without much hassle. And then finally, I'll just touch upon the travel opportunities. This isn't like Singapore as a country itself, but just the location of it is phenomenal. So there are so many cheap airlines that fly from Singapore, and it's in Southeast Asia, so it really is a fantastic place to travel to nearby countries. So I did travel to Bali, I went to Kuala Lumpur, I went to Ho Chi Minh City, Bangkok a couple times, and Tokyo. So, you know, going to any of those places costs a foot and a leg from Finland, but from Singapore it was fairly inexpensive and affordable, even for a student. So that was something I did try to take advantage of, because who knows when I'll get the chance to go next. So yeah, just the location of it makes for a very good destination for, you know, expensive travel. And I know a lot of other Finnish exchange students probably went somewhere every single weekend. That was a little extreme for me, so I did not do that, but there were so many people that were just traveling all the time because there's so many amazing places to visit there. It's just unbelievable. So yeah, those were some of my favorite aspects of living in Singapore. Do let me know what your favorite parts of living in your own oh my. Do let me know what your favorite aspects of living in the country where you are from are. I would love to hear. I'm sorry, the dog is barking again. And yeah, I guess that just about concludes this video, so till next time.